Welcome back to the Tracy Take. I'm Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and today we are breaking down the Houston Texans 2024 offseason. We're going to go over all of the free agent acquisitions, draft picks, and then also all of the former Texas players that are now on different teams. We're going to get into that here in a second, but before we do that, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the Tracy Take, and also ring the bell to get notified when new videos are released. We have videos coming out Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and we did an offseason recap for all 32 teams. So if you want to see how the other teams did in the league, be sure to ring that bell and also subscribe to the Tracy Take. Ryan, let's pull up the chart here. We're going to start off with the 2023 rankings. And right before we get that, I will say this is the eighth team that we've done so far in our offseason recap. This will probably be coming out Thursday, June 12th, or Wednesday, June 12th, I will say. And I'm already calling it right now. I think the Houston Texans have won the offseason. We haven't finished reviewing, I haven't done the rest of the research, I'll say. But as we kind of go into the people that they lost and the people who they picked up as well, and then how they did in the draft, and then also then too, I think then as well, we can even talk a little bit about the future draft picks that they gained up as well. I just think that they absolutely dominated this offseason, and I think they're going to be one of the top teams in the 2024 season here. They were already one of the top teams in 2023. Their offense started off slow. We didn't really know how C.J. Stroud would go and develop, but that Bobby Slowick offense that he's put together, DeMeco Ryans, I think put up a very formidable defense that I think got even better as well, especially as the season went on, and now even this offseason. Just kind of go look at these numbers. I think some of them are maybe a little bit lower just because of the slower start on both sides of the ball, getting in that new system. But as we saw towards the end of the season, though, they were one of the top teams. And I think just a little bit more experience, I think that they could make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, no, for sure. This team to make the playoffs with a rookie quarterback and then go win a playoff game, I think is a fantastic feat in and of itself. This defense, I thought it was good last year. I think this defense could take tremendous strides in this upcoming year because DeMeco Ryans has another offseason to help implement the players that he wants in this team. They went out, they got a few star power caliber players, and I just think they did a really, really good job doing that.
Mhm.
Before we get into the players that they lost and added, though, I want to run through these numbers. I was kind of cracking up a little bit when I was doing the offensive rankings because they were just like a little bit better than Jacksonville at everything. So total yards, they were 12th. Jacksonville was 13th. In total passing yards, they were 7th. Jacksonville was 9th. And in total rushing yards, Jacksonville was 24th. Houston was 23rd. And so I think, and that was a really good way to summarize this team is I thought Jacksonville had a good offense. I think this team was just a little bit better than good last year. CJ Stroud had I don't say a really great rookie season because it was probably the best rookie quarterback season we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to understate that. And this offense really seemed to click. This defense, while productive, still has a ton of room for improvement. It definitely had a few weaknesses last year. The passing defense wasn't quite what we all wanted it to be, especially with Derek Stingley Jr. down there being the top corner and DeMeco Ryans calling the plays. But again, he had another offseason where he got to transition out some of the past regime's players and transition in some of his. So I like what he's doing down there
Mhm.
in Houston.
Yeah. No, it's similar to, I think, then as we saw like Green Bay Packers and we see with Matt LaFleur as well. Miko Ryan's the same thing. It's like he started off slow, kind of questioning kind of some of the decisions. But then I think that consistent coaching style and shows how great D'Amico Ryans is as a coach is that it really started to click, really started to that philosophy really started to sink in with the team as well. And they just kept producing and they just kept dominating. And you just kind of go and look at some of the teams that they beat as well, kind of coming down the stretch. And really, honestly, just throughout the season, just the performance that they put up as well. Dominating Jacksonville. I believe actually, they just lost to Jacksonville in week 12. It was like, I think, a 60-yard field goal. But they got the first win in a shocking fashion down in Jacksonville as well. They competed well against a lot of the teams. And so I think that they're going to keep building on that. They dominated the Browns in the first round of their playoff game. And so I think that game with Baltimore was close in the playoffs as well, but that Baltimore defense just came to be too much. Kind of especially to come into that second half as well, and they were just clearly
Yeah.
just a much better team. I think it was maybe just a little too early for that moment for the Texans.
Mhm.
I think
I
that
think it
they're
was a
young.
close final score, but I thought Baltimore was in control the whole time.
No, Baltimore ended up winning 34-10, but it was close. It
Oh,
was.
then
Let me pull this up here. Yeah, it was tied at halftime, 10-all.
okay,
And so
okay. So then
it was a
so then I had it reversed. It was close for
yeah.
most of the game, and then the final score made it look
Yeah.
worse than it was.
Even
Okay.
going into the third quarter, it was 17-10. They were right there with them. And then they
Yeah.
scored immediately to go up 24-10 to start the fourth quarter. And then Texas just couldn't really do much
Yeah.
of anything outside of that. And so it was close. It was right there. The team is there. The score looks much worse than what it actually was. But I mean, 17-10 going into the fourth quarter, anything could go and happen.
Yeah.
And that was up against the MVP Lamar Jackson as well. I think it would have been very fascinating to see the Texans go up against the Chiefs. So let's move on now to the people that did move on from the team here. We'll say then starting off from normally, I would say losing Jonathan Grenard, Sheldon Rankins, and Malik Collins, I think would be a bigger deal. But we're going to get into their acquisitions here in a second. But these are still guys here. Jonathan Grenard, if I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
was a 10 plus sack guy. Let me pull up his stats right here. And so, yeah, 12 and a half sacks, led the team as well. He ended up moving on, and actually, he went to Minnesota as well. Sheldon Rankins, he had 6 sacks. Malik Collins had 5 sacks. So that is 23 and a half sacks that are leaving the team. But we'll get into here in a second. They're getting that same return back. And honestly, I think even two potentially even better players
Yeah.
just as well. And so I think they improved in the running back room, getting Joe Mixon. I know he's older, but I still feel that that's going to be an improvement to Devin Singletary. We'll say I think the Damian Pierce time is gone in Houston. I think that they're going to keep trying to find a younger running back post Joe Mixon here. So I think Damian
Yeah.
Pierce is probably not going to be the guy.
Well, he's only in his third year. I just don't. For some reason, I just don't think that they seem to be happy with him. Maybe he's not quite the uh, speedster that they had in mind because he had a good rookie season there, but again, just not like I don't know if he just isn't quite a system fit
Yeah.
or what. But they
Well,
seem to be moving on from him.
Well, and that was a rookie season too, where Davis Mills was the quarterback, and then like there was not really anybody else. I think it was also Nico
Yeah.
Collins' rookie year as well, and so he had more opportunity to shine. But I think as the team gets better, and no offense to Devin Singletary, but Devin Singletary wasn't a guy in Buffalo, and then they
Yeah,
got
they
Devin
were preferring
Singletary cheap.
him over Damian
Yeah, and
Pierce.
they preferred him
So
over. It got Devin Singletary a job up in New York, and so
yeah,
he's happy about that. But I think the biggest thing, though, when looking at this, and there's a couple other guys as well that moved on. Like a lot of defensive guys have moved on, yes. But I think the thing, though, is as we're going to get into here in a second, it is going to be their acquisitions. But they did lose George Fant in free agency to Fant. My apologies. To Seattle as well. So kind of just watching the offensive line, how does that kind of keep going and developing? But in general, though, I'm not nearly as concerned about this because if we want to now move on to their acquisitions, unless there's anything else that you were wanting to say.
nope.
So here, Daniil Hunter, Stephon Diggs, Aziz Al-Shaair, Danico Autry, Joe Mixon. Uh, I don't know how to Florenzo Fatukasi. I think that's pretty good actually.
Fatukasi, I know is his last name.
There you go. I think that those are all very solid guys that they added, particularly all within that front seven, outside of Joe Mixon, obviously.
Yeah.
But still, even getting
Well,
guys
and
though,
Diggs.
yeah. But still, even getting guys to help out the secondary, such as Mike Ford, Lonnie Johnson, C.J. Henderson, as well, Jeff Okuda, all guys who are minimum are going to be able to help provide like good serviceable minutes, even if it's still more in a rotational role. And so I just think that they absolutely crushed this. The free agent acquisitions, especially to just get Daniil Hunter, Aziz Al-Shaair, and then Danico Autry. Aziz Al-Shaair was a linebacker for the 49ers when he was there as the
Yeah.
defense coordinator in that system. And so I think that's going to be, I think they're going to really like working together again.
Yeah, and he was really solid in San Francisco a few seasons ago. I really like what they did. I again, when you see it's like some of these mass exoduses of players, I think a lot of it is just coaching regimes prefer a certain style of player or a player that can play a certain role or a certain number of roles in their system. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And I think
Mhm.
also you look at this pass defense. So they went out and they signed what, one, two, three, four, five guys in the secondary, all of which are to really inexpensive contracts. So they're going to pick probably the best two or three of those guys and keep them on there. They drafted two guys in the top 100 uh, as well that are rostered locks unless
Yeah.
something drastic happens there, or like they get injured. So again, they threw seven different assets at the secondary to help shore up some of that passing defense, which was a little bit of a weakness last year.
Mhm.
And then you go look, they lost George Fant and Josh Jones at the right tackle spot. They went out, they got Blake Fisher, the right tackle from Notre Dame,
Yeah.
there as well. So I
Well,
really like,
oh, and I'll say too that they do have Titus Howard, who as a right tackle now, so
yeah, yeah,
who is going to be a very strong right tackle.
yeah, yeah. Well, so Blake Fisher as adds that depth back.
Mhm.
He can also play guard. I think Kenyon Green is one of the guy is the right guard,
Left
and
guard.
the
Yeah.
left guard that didn't have a great rookie season. I'm actually not sure how he graded out last year. So uh, the fact I don't know his name is probably a good thing. But again, they did a really good job of adding depth here in the draft as well, and kind of supporting some of some of the pieces that they lost, and then also who they added in free agency, kind of getting some more guys to come in and compete with them. So all in all, they made some really great moves. I feel like we haven't talked enough about the Stephon Diggs acquisition. I They already had a great receiving room. You had Dalton Schultz at the tight end spot, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Noah Brown was a really solid receiver that they re-signed. Um,
Shoot,
and so
and John Mechie. I think. I mean, I
yeah,
think that's
John,
still he's
yeah,
healthy, which is the most important thing. But I think kind of getting his sea legs a little bit, and I think coming out. So I think there's still going to be some more
yeah,
of that depth. Yeah, Stephon Diggs. It is. Yeah, I'd put this receiving room up against anybody. I just hope. I mean, Tank Dell. I just hope that he can just stay healthy.
yeah,
He seems to have some horrible luck, but yeah, I think Nico Collins. I think Stephon Diggs is a great compliment to Nico Collins and Tank Dell. I think he's almost like that middle type person. Like like Nico Collins is the
so
X guy, Tank Dell's the slot guy, and then Stephon Diggs like a perfect mesh in between them.
yeah, and like so, imagine Stephon Diggs on uh the what he'd be the Z, so he'd be on the short side of the field with one-on-one coverage. And then you have Tank down the slot and Nico Collins on the other side. I mean, that's just unstoppable. And then you have Dalton Schultz running the seam.
Yeah,
That's a fantastic wide receiver room. You have Laramie Tunsil, the left tackle. This offensive line was pretty good last year
yeah.
as well. So,
Well, and
all in
this
all, I think this is just uh, probably the move of the offseason, in my
Well,
opinion.
that would be a good video. That'd be a good debate. I will say, well, to see how Kirk Cousins does in Atlanta.
Well,
But
true. Yeah.
when it comes to Stephon Diggs, even if they throw the ball 40 times is a lot for a game. But still, if they throw the ball 40 times, let's say, I mean, I could see 10 targets going to Nico, 10 going to Tank, and then 10 going to Stephon. And uh,
Five
it's
to
like all
everybody
those
else.
guys are going to have good matchups. I feel I trust
Yeah.
CJ Stroud is going to be able to make that read. The way Bobby Slow can set up this offense, get guys open. I think I really think that we can see this offense even take off more than what it was last year. I mean, seventh in overall passing. I think they could easily be number one next year.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And so I think part of the reason why they were lower in the running game is they did throw the ball a lot last year. So it's going to be really interesting. Let's get into the depth chart here for this team. And again, none of these rookies are probably going to crack the starting lineup. They do have Titus Howard at right tackle. I think this offensive line looks really good. Um, Wide receiver room looks really good. They have five guys who we kind of already mentioned that are really good. Not to mention even Xavier Hutchinson. had some decent catches for them last year as well. And
Hmm.
so I like that one. I mean, not a whole lot of like stuff to follow here. I mean, it's just kind of
Yeah.
this is going to be a great offense this year.
I think to me, he kind of mentioned it a little bit, but just the guard position and just seeing how Kenyon Green and also Shaq Mason end up doing it. If there's any
Mhm.
potential competition, I think for starting spots, it might be there, particularly on the Shaq Mason side as well. So just kind of maybe seeing as your point, like with Blake Fisher, if they're able to move him around or want to move him around at all. I think we'll
Yeah,
see. But to your point, though, I mean,
Shaq Mason's pretty solid. I don't really think he'll be giving up a spot.
I'm thinking of Donovan Smith because both of them came from Tampa Bay, but he was the guy that was older. So I
Yeah.
was thinking of him. You're right, Jack Mason. You're good. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No,
So
I mean, really, I think this offense is going to be. This is the second year a lot of these guys are going to be in this system. I think this offense is going to be really, really good. On the defensive side of the ball, they added a lot of really good players. I'm very interested to see how they utilize all of them. So Will Anderson had a good rookie season. They added
Danico
Fatukasi,
Autry,
Danico Autry, and Daniil Hunter. So three new guys uh, coming in, and then Aziz Al Shair, Christian Harris, Henry Toto. Christian Harris and Henry Toto had decent, pretty good years last year. So Aziz Al Shair, I think, kind of fits right in. And then Derek Stingley at that cornerback one, CB1 spot. Where does everybody else kind of fall into line? So that to me, I think, is just how do all of these new pieces fit together. I have an extremely high amount of confidence that D'Amico Ryans will be able to figure it out, though.
yeah. Well, because even now too. So you put Kamari Lassiter here. So now you got a CB battle here going on between Kamari Lassiter
Yeah,
and Jeff Okuda for CB2 spot. You also throw CJ Henderson in there as well, who they picked up. But even then,
yeah,
too, all those guys I think are solid. Are solid corners as well, who are going to be able to provide good matchups. You can even potentially even uh, um, play more playing time depending on the matchup if there's a certain height advantage or speed advantage, so to say. But then you still have Desmond King, Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petrie as well. So this is a young secondary group that's only going to keep getting better as well. And so I think some of those numbers, what we saw, especially defensively, that we saw. So like 23rd in the passing game. I mean, one thing also too, while they were 23rd in the overall passing yards allowed, is because a lot of their games were shootouts. So it's like
yeah,
they get up, so then now like they're giving up a lot of chump change, garbage time, passing yards. Or that being said, just the offense is having a good day, and then they're going up against another extreme offense. So I think I think that's why some of those numbers are a little bit inflated, and also maybe too why they were sixth in rushing. But that being said, that they did also have a great defensive line, and
yeah.
arguably even improved on the defensive line aspect of it as well. And so I think it's going to be fascinating to see. Let's go and break down their schedule here. I will say they have a very unique schedule here. Since they won the division, they're going to be playing all of the other division winners. That's going to be on their schedule as well, not in a specific already preset division cross conference matchup, but at Indiana, hosting Chicago, at Minnesota, Jacksonville, Buffalo, at New England. Not the toughest of opening stretches, I think, for the Texans. I think it's very possible that they win all of those games. They come out 6-0, going up at Indy, Chicago. Both those teams, I mean, both those teams are just going to be absolute wild cards. We don't know how Caleb Williams is going to be. On paper, that Chicago team should be really good, but does he need a couple of games? Same thing, honestly, with
Mhm.
Anthony Richardson. We've only seen him play for a couple of games. How is that Indianapolis team going to be to start off the season? When, in all honesty, actually, Indianapolis almost beat Houston to end the season for that playoff spot. So yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
going to be a very good game. But Minnesota, Jacksonville, Buffalo at New England, I think they should win those games. They match up well against those teams, especially to Buffalo, who seem to be going through a little bit of a rebuild here. If Houston's able to
yeah.
stop the run, I think it's going to help out a lot with beating Buffalo and potentially could start off 6-0.
Yeah, I really think these first six games, anything less than 4-2, I think is a bad start for them.
Yeah.
They should. win at least one of the division matchups. I think Chicago, I think D'Amico Ryans will be able to throw some interesting looks Caleb Williams' way. And then, yeah, like they're just a better team than New England and Minnesota. So, I just think that they're a better team. The Buffalo game is interesting to me because I don't know. I mean, with Josh Allen, you always have a chance, but it just kind of depends on which Buffalo team really shows up that day.
Mhm.
But let's get into the middle part of their schedule here: at Green Bay, Indiana, at New York, Detroit, and then at Dallas. That's a pretty tough 5 game stretch there. Uh, I think going 3-3 in this at Green Bay, at Dallas, Detroit is a playoff Super Bowl caliber team. So all in all, I think that's a really tough mix right there. And then another division matchup there with Indiana or Indianapolis, I think is going to be. Those are always tough.
Yeah, yeah. And so that is going to be a tough stretch. They're going to get a little bit of a break here. I mean, they could still lose to Tennessee and Jacksonville in the week 12 and week 13. But I think
Yeah.
that's going to be much needed, easier portion of the schedule. And then you get a bye. Because the thing to me, I'm going to love watching these games. But
Oh yeah.
15, 16, 17, Miami at Kansas City, home against Baltimore. I mean, those are potential AFC Championship conference matchup there, especially week
Oh
16,
yeah.
week 17. So Miami will have to kind of wait and see how they end up doing if they're able to stay healthy and can start off super hot and hopefully get home field advantage. But that's a totally separate conversation here. But uh, that I think that's going to be very telling to see kind of where this team is at. Is if they can come out 2-1, or even if they go 1-2 during that stretch, but it's like they lose by a field goal.
Yeah.
It's like okay, this team is going to be here because the Texans will play one of these teams again in the playoffs for sure. And so that I think is going to be absolutely fascinating to go and see how they end up doing against these guys. Because I would say right now the Texans, Kansas City, and Baltimore. I'm trying to think if I'm missing any. Um, are the top 3 teams in the AFC? Unless if I'm just missing something right now. I'm trying to think if I'm missing.
The Texans, Baltimore, Kansas City,
I mean, we can
uh,
list off. There's a bunch of good teams, but
Miami,
if we're talking about
uh, Cincinnati, I think is also
yeah,
in
we'll have to
there.
kind of wait and see how Joe Burrow does with his wrist.
Yeah. I
Sorry, not wrist,
if
but
we're
just
really having that conversation, I don't know if I include Houston with Baltimore and Kansas City. I think those two teams, you have multi-time MVP quarterbacks, you have great defenses, you have some offensive weapons there. Like
yeah,
those two teams, I think are in a class of their own. And then like Houston, CJ Stroud had a great rookie season. We've definitely seen quarterbacks come back with a sophomore slump, though.
yeah,
Like there are still maybe a few concerns with the Texans, but I agree they're in the top 5 teams in the AFC.
yeah,
So
yeah. I think when I look at I would say top 5. I would think top 3. I'm trying to think. I would take Houston
yeah,
over Cincinnati right now based off these teams. And so obviously we know
yeah,
how Cincinnati likes to start slow or whatnot. I just think overall well-roundedness. I think that Houston's offense and defense I think are better than the overall sum of it is better than the Bengals offense and defense. So
yeah, yeah. I
unfortunately, yeah,
agree. And you look at Buffalo; they're in a rebuilding phase. Also, Miami, not in a rebuilding phase, but not in a yeah.
not in
I agree with what you're saying.
Miami's not in a good shape. Like I think that they're still playoff contenders here, and potentially if
Yeah,
everything goes right, just because they're so different. But they're a one-trick pony, and they got they put all their money on this one pony. I think if this doesn't work, they're going to blow it up here. I think after this
yeah,
season or next, and so they could still potentially do it. It's just because of how much of a mismatch they are to so many teams with their speed. But I think
yeah,
the Texans have an opportunity here. Are they better than Kansas City, Baltimore? I can see your point how those two teams are in a tier of their own. Well, Kansas City I think might be in a tier of its own, and then there's everybody else. But I I think in general this is for coming off division champs. It's a tougher schedule than most of the other teams in the AFC South, but I think very manageable. I think very
Yeah.
manageable team. But just like any other schedule, you got to beat your division opponents. You, you have to win those games. You have to take care of business in the primetime games, and I think they have good matchups for both of their primetime games that we have right now. So I think if we want to move on to the records here, I have them winning the AFC South. I have them winning about 12 games. I think that that's fair. Kind of look at that schedule. I think 6-0 to start off is unrealistic. It's hard, probably not likely. But it's not unrealistic. I would say. I think their first loss is going to be at Green Bay because that Green Bay team is up there for one of the best in the league, also. Uh, and then I think then they just have a very manageable stretch up until that week 15 where they go Miami, Kansas City, Baltimore. I think that's good. I think that's going to be tough for them, uh, just because they're going to be going up against the teams that, on paper, that we all talk about should be the Super Bowl contenders here. And so I think they can beat Miami. I think they're more well rounded than Miami, but Kansas City and Baltimore, that's what we'll find out. It's going to be at a perfect time of the season to get us prepped for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. 11-6. I really could see them going 12-5. Any win, double digit win total, I think gets you into the playoffs. I think, uh, as you said, they're knocking on the door of one of the top teams in the AFC, uh,
Yeah.
and or yeah, they're knocking on the door for being what the top team in the AFC. Realistically, they were a game away from the AFC Championship, and I like. I look at this schedule, excluding that final 4 games, which to me, Miami in Week 15, we'll see. We'll see where they're at injury wise. We'll see where they're at depth wise because they usually play the first 7 games hard and then fall off.
Hmm.
And then but really Kansas City and Baltimore back to back are the only that's other than that, it's usually like they have Detroit and Dallas, but we don't know how good Dallas is going to be after Dan Quinn lost and everything. So, or Dan Quinn was lost. So, all in all, like they should have a really good path to double digit wins, which will get them in the playoffs. And then from there, they have the talent to compete with any of these teams.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that to me, I think really comes down to like just how well they've rebuilt this team in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. No, it's
So
I think the Texans, as I said in the beginning, and I need to do the research more, and we'll get to that during our off-season recap series. So be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to see when those videos come out. But I just remember too, kind of live reaction of everything happening. Then you go see their signings, and you're just thinking like, man, this team got so much. Like they took a B plus A minus player like Jonathan Bernard and got like an A player in Danielle Hunter. And nothing
yeah.
against Jonathan Bernard, but it's like Danielle Hunter year in and year out. Only time, let me pull even up his stats here.
Well, last year was his best year by a pretty wide margin. He was
No, but
always a good player.
oh, I didn't mean Jonathan Bernard. I meant Danielle Hunter.
Oh,
So let me see this here. The only time he didn't get, so there's one time in his career that he didn't get above 10 and a half sacks in a season where he played a full season. And that was in 2017, he only had 7 sacks. In his rookie year, he only had 6 sacks. He had 6 sacks through 14 games. He only started 1 game, so he was a rotational player there. In 2021, he only played in 7 games and had 6 sacks before he got hurt. So about a sack a game. And so on average, he's at 14 and a half sacks. He had 16 and a half sacks last year. So this is just one guy coming on Minnesota. And he's unlike, I think, for the outside players, where once you get over 30, speed really starts to become more important. He's going to be 30 this season. And for defensive linemen, you're going to see it more like as he gets older. But he's still, I would say, maybe just on the other side of his prime. 16 and a half sacks, that's a lot to ask for. With how deep that defensive line is, like with Will Anderson, Danico Autry, then you still have Aziz Al-Shaair, and then Henry Toa, and then you have Christian Harris as well, and then Fali Fukasi as well. And then as well, just then with the rest of their depth pieces like Mario Edwards, Tim Settle, who they got, it's there's going to be so much attention on all those other guys as well. He's going to have a lot of one-on-one opportunities. Like this was 16 and a half sacks in Minnesota, especially to this past season where uh, um, there wasn't too much other talent on the defensive side of the ball. Brian Flores had a great defensive scheme that provided a lot of pressure, which gave him a lot of opportunity. I think he's still going to have a lot of good one-on-one opportunity here to get a lot more sacks. So I think he could potentially even do 16 sacks again,
Yeah.
just about one sacks a game.
Yeah, no, and like so that's just on the defensive side of the ball. You add Stephon Diggs to this group that was one of the top ones in the league last
Yeah.
year.
They didn't need him,
Yeah, they definitely didn't need him.
and they got him. So
Yeah, and so this is just going to be a force to be reckoned with, I think, in the AFC. And I'm really curious how well CJ Stroud is going to play, because if he can improve off of what he did last year, oh man, I mean that's going to be.
well, I'll say this because I've talked about how great their acquisitions are. Probably, and if you're still with us, leave a comment down below. Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this. Just because I think probably the biggest thing for this team
Not
was
losing.
was Bobby Slowick staying as the offensive coordinator. Obviously,
Yeah.
we talked all about the acquisitions and everything, and now we're just getting to this point here. But even to your Patriots, your great Patriots, I think one of the things that helped them be so successful is they didn't change any of their coordinators. So all of that offensive scheming, all that defensive scheming, it was the same for a decade. Josh McDaniels was there for essentially a
Yeah.
decade. He took a little detour to Denver, but then came
Yeah.
back. And
Well,
then honestly,
he
it's
was
been
like an offensive assistant for a while, and then when he went to Denver, Bill O'Brien became the OC, and then
yeah,
by the
no,
time
no, no,
O'Brien went to Houston, then
yeah,
McDaniels came back. So like I
yeah.
get what you're
We don't
saying,
need
but
that's not my point. And so,
yeah,
but the point is though, is like I think when teams see Falcons, I'll now go to the Falcons for the exact opposite effect. When our offense was great, Kyle Shanahan was the offense coordinator. He was there for 2 years, went to the Super Bowl. We all know what happens. And then he left, and then our offense hasn't been the same since then. So I think now Bobby Slowick, a majority of this offense is still there, especially to like guys like Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, and so they already know all the lingo. They know the scheming. They can only keep building off of that because they know all of that stuff. They know that playbook. It's not a new playbook. It's not a new system. Stephon Diggs is going to have to learn a new system, but it's much easier to teach one guy the system. I think other guys can come in and help out than a whole offense and a QB trying to learn the lingo, making sure everybody's right and making sure everybody's set. So that's why I think they're only going to keep building off that success, especially too when it comes to the offensive side of the ball.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I think again, I just think this is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the AFC,
Yeah.
and yeah, keeping Bobby Slowick, especially just for one more year, so CJ Stroud has that extra year of acclimation. Because you got to think Bobby Slowick is going to get a head coaching job somewhere else
Eventually.
after this. Yeah.
Eventually.
So when that transition does come, CJ Stroud will have all that more experience with Bobby Slowick. But
Yeah.
let's go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. We appreciate you making it this far in the video. Leave a comment down below on what you thought of the Houston Texans offseason. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? If you did hate it, I don't know what else they could have done to appease you, but let us know down below, and on that we'll see you guys next time.